2019 Vincent Ragasokamuna. I took the COVID-19 vaccine, and so should you. Let's be an example to others. Get vaccinated today and help control the spread of COVID-19.
Vaccinate if you want to eliminate the spread of the virus in our place, and do not procrastinate, but rather let us vaccinate. Get vaccinated today. Hello and hi.
Hello everyone, I am Shakel Bob. I am a former Miss Pitani, a former Miss Rural SVG and Miss SVG contestant and runner-up. I'm a lawyer by profession, but a pageant lover at heart. Do not let the negatives prey on your mind, because a stitch in time saves 9. So, it's COVID vaccination time. Get vaccinated today to reduce the impact of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And I urge you, get vaccinated. It is safe and it is effective. Stop the spread, help the fight, and make the choice that is right. And let us unite and do the thing right.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, Digital Plus is set to officially roll out this month across the country. President of the Seventh-day Adventist Mission urges members to get vaccinated against COVID-19. And activities to mark Teachers Solidarity Week continues across the country. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. It's good to be back. This week we are pleased to welcome back the Minister of Tourism, Culture, Sustainable Development and Aviation, et al. We are pleased to welcome you back to our program. You're just fresh out of Glasgow from the COP meeting. We also have with us the Chairman of the National Nine Mornings Committee, Buronde Bomani. Bomani, I'm missing your last name, but Bomani, everybody knows you as Bomani. And the deputy, who is Mr. Lennox Bowman. I can't forget Bowman, right? But I'm forgetting my cousin's last name. Such a shame. Anyway, welcome everyone. We're going to first start with the minister. You have just returned from Scotland, where you led this country's delegation to COP meeting. Tell us a bit about that. First of all, explain to our viewers and listeners what exactly does COP mean and what was the experience there? What was your message from St. Vincent and the Grenadines at this meeting, which was billed probably the most important so far?
Thank you very much, Teresa, for having me on your program once again. It's really good to be on Roundtable Talk and to, of course, inform the listeners and viewers of your program as to what is taking place, not just with my ministry, but generally what developments are taking place in relation to matters that touch on concerns the state. We took a delegation of 4 to the Conference of Parties, the 26th meeting, which was held in Glasgow, Scotland, just over a couple of days ago. It was roughly a 3-week period. The Conference of Parties is really a part of the United Nations framework for climate change, UNFCCC, which really focuses on getting countries together in one room at one negotiating table to determine how do we proceed in terms of ensuring that we limit our use of fossil fuels, we limit our use of the exposure to greenhouse gases, and ensuring that our planet stays below the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, in which a lot of the small island developing states require in relation for us to our survival. You look at some of the beaches on the south coast of St. Vincent and also in the Grenadines, where we're seeing higher sea levels. Beaches are disappearing. In some instances, in places like Mairo, they're literally beaches. The erosion that is taking place, splitting some of the islands in half, and threatening the sustainability and the livelihoods that are surrounding some of these islands. And essentially what COP26 does, and all of the COPs prior, is it's getting countries together to agree that these are measures that we can take to curb our exposure, to curb what is taking place in terms of emissions from greenhouse gases, and how do we a roadmap as to how we proceed going forward. On this occasion, it's been billed so far as one of the most successful COP in comparison to previous Conference of the Parties, where we've had a lot of commitments in the declarations that were finalized and issued, but not a lot of physical work being taken by some of these countries and ensuring that their national determined contributions, their NDCs, are on par with what they committed and what they pledged. So we saw coming out from this COP, in fact, we call it the Glasgow package, where we finalized the Paris Rule Book and ensuring that countries comply with previous goals and targets which were set from the previous meetings, as well as we saw an increase in contributions and commitment financially from larger countries to developing states as to how best we can support adaptation and loss and mitigation measures in relation to our fight against climate change. One of the things, Teresa, we looked at is you have small island developing states like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we've had our limitations, natural disasters. We're not able to properly deal with the measures to adaptation, deal with measures in relation to loss and damage. And once we have the support from developed countries, not just financial support, but also transferring technology, support in relation to the logistics and in how we can really streamline our fight and efforts to tackle climate change and all of the necessary greenhouse gases and all the things that related to climate change in relation to that. So we have had some success coming out of Glasgow in relation to that. And we would not wait until another meeting of COP to see whether or not those targets have been met. What we have agreed initially is to go back to the drawing board within another 2 years, by 2023, to see how best we can really say, track what the progress has been, the commitments that have been given, the pledges, and whether or not we have had any compliance in relation to that. So we're hoping to see some developments in relation to that.
What has St. Vincent and the Grenadines committed to in respect of COP as a result of this meeting? What are some of the specific things?
Our NDCs, and we're currently working on putting together our national determined contributions. And our NDCs will focus on our energy policy and all of the measures that we can put in place locally, that we ourselves here in St. Vincent can really play our part in limiting our emissions in terms of the fossil fuel dependency and all of that. Renewables, focusing on renewables. You know, we started approaching the idea of the geothermal project. We have gone into solar, expanding our solar plants down at the site in, can't remember the name of exactly where it is, but we have expanded solar and also focused on hydro, which we have been doing over a number of years now in terms of supply of electricity. So we have done our bit locally here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and it's really up to the larger countries who they were responsible for over 80% of the carbon emissions to really curb their carbon emissions that are affecting us. We're on the front line here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, with all of the small island developing states where that's concerned.
Now, to a large extent, these things mean nothing to the smaller man, the ordinary man. What specific action, what small thing can the ordinary person do to aid this cause as it relates to climate change?
Well, one of the simple things is really our sustainability and focusing on renewables and things that we can focus on in our smaller communities, how best we can utilize a lot more of the, for instance, you're looking at vehicles. What we've done in St. Vincent is we've limited the amount of vehicles that can come in at over a certain year, certain age vehicle. Engines, fish or folk and so on. What we have to do is look at how best we can put the necessary framework in place from a local level to see how we can ensure that we have sustainability and to ensure that we use more renewables and to ensure that we're able to limit in our own little way our carbon footprint.
Okay, and a question is already here for you. Someone wants to know if the oceans are causing such devastation to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who and what is causing that, and how do you propose we handle this problem?
I didn't get the question. If
Okay,
the ocean,
so the person is
right,
asking, yeah, if the oceans are causing such devastation to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who and what is causing that, and how do you propose we handle this problem?
Right. So I think when we look at our oceanscape and we look at the high level of high sea level rises and so on, we have to first address the issue from larger countries that are making that huge carbon emissions, producing a high production of coal and greenhouse gases. And one of the things that we have always done, even at a UN security level, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. We've always advocated that small island developing states who are at the front line of the damage that is usually caused by climate change are to be given concessionary terms in terms of finance in relation to climate finance, so that we can put measures in place to adapt and to deal with the loss. We have advocated even at the UNFCCC and forums like COP26 to ensure that there's a carve-out for small island developing states. And we've always been at the forefront of that. But really it takes a collective effort and approach from all stakeholders, not just developed countries, but we're talking about international agencies. For instance, how difficult it is for us to get secure financing to deal with adaptation, how difficult it is for us to approve projects, the bottlenecks that are there from financial institutions. If there's a natural disaster, how quickly can we draw down on funding for these projects? And all of these challenges, which are not just as a result of climate change, but the mechanisms that are in place that deter us from accessing financing, accessing support, are part of the challenge in which we have been advocating and pushing to ensure that we're able to get sustained. So positive use of some of these mechanisms.
Okay, thank you. We'll take our first break, and when we come back, we'll talk tourism.
wristbands winner, Thierry Lockhart. I am urging you to practice social distancing to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Avoid large gatherings, and if you have to stand in a line, make sure you are 3 feet apart from the other person. Get vaccinated today, protect yourself, and be responsible.
And I urge you, get vaccinated. It is safe and it is effective. Stop the spread, help the fight, and make the choice that is right. And let us unite and do the thing right. Man and woman, let us join in the fight.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, Digicel Plus is set to officially roll out this month across the country. President of the Seventh-day Adventist Mission urges members to get vaccinated against COVID-19. And activities to mark Teachers Solidarity Week continues across the country. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
Welcome back. Minister, I know that we said we were going to be talking tourism, but there's a link, and I wanted to ask you before we go into tourism totally, what are the challenges that a warmer climate can pose to the tourism industry, if any?
Well, I mean, it's really interlinked. A warmer climate really affects not just the tourism sector, but generally it affects our economy. It affects in context of how we dwell as a people. I'll give you an example of that. Our stability on island, if there's an extended drought, there's food security. There's no food to be produced. Of course, it affects how we sustain ourselves. If there are heavy downpours of unusual types of weather patterns, changes in weather patterns, what really we see is that we will have, of course, less persons coming in terms of cruise ships because, for instance, we have seen in the cases of Dominica with Hurricane Maria. We have seen in the case of Antigua and Barbuda where we have had some significant unusual weather patterns and increased activity in terms of hurricanes, which have devastated some of these islands. So of course it has that implication, not just for tourism, but from a broader economic front in terms of our entire development as a country. And then of course, you look at the cost to repair and the cost to reconstruct and to rehabilitate, which again is a significant amount of resources that will be required. Of course, you may have resources allocated to go towards healthcare and education and other types of development, but then you have to put a lot more funding into adaptation, a lot more funding into rehabilitation. And once you're not able to properly have sufficient resources allocated for other sectors within the economy, you then would see quite naturally a downturn or in economic growth. And these are some of the things that we've been advocating as small island states to larger countries. We spend a significant amount of resources dealing with issues of climate change and the expenditure that we put out dealing with rehabilitation. Because of disasters which are not of our own, not our fault, but we have to spend, and not only that we're limited in terms of our grant funding, but we have to go and borrow in some instances at high interest rates to deal with some of these challenges. And these are the things that we continue to really put out there to persons and to ensure that larger countries are cognizant of what they put out in terms of greenhouse gases and the implications of that on small island developing states.
So we are actually in a state of rehabilitation, as it were, um, having suffered two disaster type situations. Of course, there's COVID-19, and of course, the eruption of La Soufrière volcano, both of which have had significant impact on our tourism product, our tourism sector. What is the state of the sector at this current time?
Well, I don't think we can get any worse than we were last year, where the tourism is concerned. We literally moved from 2019, where we had high volumes of stopover arrivals, persons coming to our destination. We saw a number of cruise ships peaking in terms of inaugural calls and ships coming to our destination as well. Then came COVID-19. And of course, we are now in the recovery phase of that. We have just seen last week our very first call to mainland, Port Kingston, very first call to Britannia after 1 year. And though we have had some smaller calls in the Grenadines, in Beckway, Port Elizabeth, and in Myra as well, earlier in the year as a testing ground, we're now seeing a slow but steady recovery of the cruise sector. We're expecting over 200 calls this season, and we're hoping that the number can stay there because we've had some cancellations and some additions. And over a period of the next few months, we're going to see some cancellations and some additions to that. But we're pretty much optimistic that this season is going to be quite better than last season. We have seen the return of the airlines, American Airlines, CAL has returned to a destination, and the inaugural flight of Virgin Atlantic Airways to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And hopefully by December 6th, we'll have added to that Air Canada coming back to Argyle. So we're hoping, we're very optimistic. We're seeing the numbers steadily increasing, and we're hoping that we can see more passengers and more persons coming to our destination this year. And it really cannot get any worse than last year in terms of our tourism's numbers in relation to spend expenditure and persons coming to our destination.
So we've had our first cruise ship back into Port Kingstown, the mainland. In terms of review, how would you say did that go in terms of the protocols, in terms of how that was actually executed? How did that go?
Well, from all reports, it's really a work in progress. We're steadily seeing the cruise protocols being put to work. One of the challenges which I would immediately identify is that we have to get a lot more vendors into some of these sites where we have identified as the bubble sites. A lot more vendors who are adhering to the protocols to be a part of the bubble sites, and for the agents of these cruise ships to really have an appreciation for that. We're trying to be inclusive, and we want to see the smaller taxi operators, we want to see the vendors benefit from this cruise season. One of the reasons why we had a restart and a successful restart is that we wanted to be inclusive of all of the stakeholders, and in particular the vendors and taxi operators who stand to benefit from this season. And we're hoping that agents and the cruise ships can accept and appreciate that and work with us so that we can see the trickle-down effect in terms of the economy.
All right, I want to ask about specific plans in respect of rehabilitation for the tourism industry. But before I do that, somebody's saying warmer climate change will not affect tourism in the Caribbean. Warmer climate may affect our food production. Does the government have any plans to provide irrigation systems to help farmers in the event of warmer climate?
Well, not being the Minister of Agriculture here, but I know that Saboto has been working very hard and closely with farmers. He has done a number of initiatives over the years with them in terms of distribution of tanks and other things and so on. And in some instances, some irrigation has been in place. But one of the things in relation to food security, which which somewhat, yes, it does also affect the tourism sector because you're talking about hotels reducing their importation bill. There's a shortage of food on island, they're going to import more. And we're looking at larger hotels to be constructed here soon in St. Vincent. We're talking about an additional 1,200 plus rooms. So it means that they're going to order more food, they're going to request more for our farmers. So obviously we have to put in place contingencies for that. One of the things that we're hoping to do in the new year is to work closely and collaboratively with the Ministry of Agriculture. Both myself and Suboto, we have to steer a committee that will see how best we can have our farmers being fully aware of what the expectations are from them, where the tourism sector is concerned, because hotels are going to be asking for more food. We have to be able to meet the demand. We have to produce not just to meet that demand, but also our local demand, our local consumption, plus our exports. And we have to, it's really about measuring our productivity, and we have to ensure that we have all of these things in place in a systematic.
Okay, so has your ministry sat down and produced a plan, a specific plan that will aid in the rehabilitation of the industry yet? If so, what are the specific contents of that plan?
We have over the period we've been working closely with the stakeholders. We started a few months ago with the stakeholders conference, and where we canvassed the views and the suggestions of a number of stakeholders within the industry. We've been working closely with the National Parks and Beaches Authority, the Tourism Authority, all of the different subsectors under the ministry to develop and streamline our efforts in terms of recovery. This includes the rehabilitation of the Villa Boardwalk, a new change room facility and chaos at Villa. Some ideas that are coming being put in place for the leeward side, which is ecotourism friendly. A number of initiatives, including the rehabilitation of the Fort Charlotte, and quite a number of initiatives which we over the next 2 to 3 years will be hoping to have implemented.
We are headed into Tourism Awareness Week from November 21st to 28th, I think it is. It's being observed under the theme Caribbean Comeback. Tell us a little bit more about the rationale for that theme and what's going to be happening over the course of those 7 days.
So Caribbean Comeback is a regional initiative of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, where all of the stakeholders and the countries involved, we're fully on board supporting each other in our recovery efforts. And we are pushing to have more traffic come into the Caribbean. The numbers are showing that there's an increase in terms of the tourism, travel and tourism internationally, but the Caribbean region, which is one of the most tourism dependent region, has been growing faster than the average, which shows that there are more people coming to the Caribbean. So Caribbean Comeback is really an initiative that is working and that is out there. We're doing our part in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So starting from next Monday, we start with a virtual day of prayer, a tourism virtual day of prayer. Then there's a tourism career talk on the Tuesday. The Wednesday, Faces of Tourism, is a virtual highlights of a crisis management training for middle management stakeholders. Then there's a hike to the Vermont Nature Trail on Wednesday, as well as a virtual tourism panel discussion on the 25th, which is the Thursday, and the Friday, Vincent Tourism Day. It's been dubbed. It's a national event which we're encouraging persons to dress like a tourist, decorate their spaces and so on, as if they're promoting the very aspect of our islands. The Monday the 29th, there's a digital marketing training for entrepreneurs within the tourism and hospitality industry. And on Tuesday, we end by announcing the competition winner for our vlog competition, which will essentially run over the period of November, where we are asking persons to share something on their social media about St. Vincent and the Grenadines, share something that is tourism related, and enter a chance to win prizes on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism. And I believe some sponsors who are partnering with the ministry in relation to that.
I know that the theme is Caribbean Comeback, which implies that there is some sort of collaboration with the region. I mean, we have all been impacted by COVID-19, except for us. We have been double jabbed, no pun intended, because we had a volcanic eruption. Is there a regional plan that is being considered to aid in this Caribbean comeback, so to speak?
We have always been working closely with our respective partners, ministers in particular in the Eastern Caribbean Islands and Barbados. We've been working very closely. In fact, one of the reasons why we have cruise ships docking at every port within the Eastern Caribbean and Barbados is because of our collaboration. We've very early worked with the cruise ships to get them back to our destinations. We've been working very early with the airlines and pushing to say, look, listen, let's work on making tourism in St. Vincent, not just St. Vincent and Grenadines, but the Caribbean work. And so far we've been seeing some promising signs and all part of our recovery efforts. That has been going pretty well so far. Some islands are going to have a slightly greater uptick than others. We expect that, but also the important thing is that we have an all hands on deck approach in terms of our tourism recovery, and we ensure that all of us are able to benefit successfully going into the season.
Okay, we'll take a second break. When we come back, we'll talk culture, we'll talk entertainment, specifically 9 Mornings, and maybe a little bit about Carnival. What's happening there? I know the National 9 Mornings Committee has some special plans for this year's celebrations. Back in just a moment.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, Digital Plus is set to officially roll out this month across the country. President of the Seventh-day Adventist Mission urges members to get vaccinated against COVID-19. And activities to mark Teachers Solidarity Week continues across the country. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
Welcome back. So, also on this evening's program, as I mentioned earlier, the chairman of the 9 Mornings Committee, Orande Bumani Charles of the Charles and Glasgow clan, which I'm a member myself, and the deputy chairperson of that committee, Lennox Bowman. Welcome again, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
So tell us what's happening. We are having 9 Mornings. I mean, a lot of people were thinking we wouldn't have any 9 Mornings, but obviously we are. Tell us what the plans are.
I was wondering if the minister should have the first go. So he has been so integral and such a driving force behind it.
Well, that's quite fine with me, Mr. Minister of Culture.
No, well, I wouldn't actually want to defer that to the team that's been working really hard. But really, one of the things this year is that we're hoping to have the 9 Morning Festival. And then we thought long and hard about whether or not we should really pass upon having our 9 mornings. And one of the things that I continue to emphasize is that the loss that we will incur in terms of our culture and what we have as a people, if we continue to let the COVID-19 pandemic really determine, our state of play. There are things that we can do to ensure that the safety of the festival, and we charge the committee with that task of coming up with working with the COVID-19 task force and the Commissioner of Police, of course, to ensure that we're able to have a successful and a safe festival. And we're quite happy to announce that we will have a 9 mornings festival this year. And I will defer to the committee, members of the committee to really explain how is the festival going to work, what are the safety measures that they've decided to put in place, and how does it really impact on our general safety during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Over to you guys.
All right, so thanks, Minister. And as Lennox mentioned, you've been an integral part of the discussions leading up to the finalization of our proposal for 9 mornings 2020, which we took to Cabinet last week. So what we finally came up with was staging a festival that was first and foremost safe for not just us as presenters and producers of the festival and the various community organizations involved nationwide, but for the general population, right? And we looked at some of the key elements of the festival, including venues, the format of the festival, and what means and mechanisms are available to us under these circumstances to be able, notwithstanding the pandemic, to be able to promote and preserve particularly cultural features of the festival. So the first thing we looked at is our traditional venue for the main stage of 9 mornings, which is in Kingston at Heritage Square. Clearly, we couldn't go there this year. In keeping with trying to establish safe spaces, the bubble concept, ensuring that we had security, ensuring that we had points where we could put people through certain processes in terms of confirming their health and safety. Victoria Park seemed to be the best bet, right, where we could exercise those controls. And so we decided to establish that venue as at least for this year until this whole thing blows over, where we at least can preserve and promote the festival. So Victoria Park will become the venue that we will host 9 mornings in Kingston this year. It will be streamed as a live stream event, and it will also be twinned as sort of a hybrid virtual vaccinated event where persons wishing to attend the live streaming, we're asking persons to be vaccinated, and because that helps us to keep everyone safe in that space, you know. And so from that perspective, we are putting together a very entertaining package for the 9 mornings at Victoria Park, for local broadcasts, and as I said, for international view through streaming on various social media platforms. The other aspect of the plans this year is to maintain the national Christmas lighting competitions in the communities. And Lennox can speak to that, where we intend to ensure that various community groups and organizations help us to, bring that cheer, keep that cheer. At least it's been a rough year, and we want to be able to look around our country this year and see the lights in the communities, and that just lifts the entire mood of our people, you know what I mean? And we want to be able, there's some innovations that we'll introduce in that respect, For example, focusing on trying to get more private homes to light. We have a string a light campaign that we want to launch, and increasing the amount of private home prizes, the community squares, gardens, just making sure that a festival of lights, hope in a darkened world, comes to life this Christmas. And I'm sure Lennox would have a lot more to say on that. And one of the things that we want to do this year is we're recognizing the circumstances that we're in. It's not lost on us that we're in the midst of a pandemic. And so we have to be one of the leading voices as the committee charged with ushering the Christmas season and the festival. Safety and health and safety is one of our main focus this year. So we're joining with several private sector interest groups and the Ministry of Health as well in helping to promote COVID safety this Christmas, and trying as much as possible to make people even more aware of the conditions that we're in, so we don't take things for granted. And so we are constantly working on ideas as a committee as to how we can stage this festival, utilizing the technology, adapting the festival to the circumstances that we're in now, so that, as the minister says, we don't have a fall off in the production of and continuation of the culture, and we can use the spaces that are available to us to at least do something this year.
Okay, I know the celebrations are being billed as unvaccinated. How do you propose to manage that process?
Right, so we held a meeting with the CMO where we discussed several options in terms of how we create that bubble space, that safe space. As you know, the Ministry of Health has a vaccination drive where they're going into communities and trying to get persons vaccinated. We also are communicating with our cultural practitioners whose services we would be utilizing during the season to encourage them to be vaccinated, because entry into that space is a requirement, right? As I said,
So would this require patrons as well as persons who are intimately involved in the production of the festivities? Everybody must be fully vaccinated.
That's correct, yes. As long as you're in that space, you must be fully vaccinated. As I said, it helps to protect us as the producers, and it helps to protect all the patrons who are in that space. Right, and so we're devising, as I said, we met with the CMO, and we're coming up with ways to sort of ease the process. We know that from some of the previously produced vaccinated events where you would have to cross-reference with the Ministry of Health. That could be a tedious process, but we did meet with the CMO, and they are working on some advancements, I think, that would help us a lot. For example, having someone on site with the entire vaccination database from the Ministry of Health, who would cross-check persons entering, so that should help to cut down on the time. Utilizing the various technologies, we heard about the code, the barcode that I think they're getting set to introduce as a means of helping to expedite that process as well. So hopefully by the time 9 Mornings rolls around, that verification process would be streamlined to help to ease some of the some of that stress, I guess. And yes, and working with the police, of course, to help us with security and establishing a parameter around the Victoria Park to ensure that it's safe for all persons who are involved.
Okay, so that means that everyone has to show their vaccination certificate at some point of entry?
Well, that would form part of the process. Persons can also, in advance, express their interest in attending if they would like to attend. like I said, once we have that database ready, it shouldn't be a problem. You walk with your card, you walk with your ID. Once you are genuinely vaccinated, you present it, they cross check it, cross reference, and you're in.
Okay, so we'll take our final break and bring back Lennox Bowman when we come back.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, Digital Plus is set to officially roll out this month across the country. President of the Seventh-day Adventist Mission urges members to get vaccinated against COVID-19. And activities to mark Teachers Solidarity Week continues across the country. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
I am Hans John, the 2019 Vincent Ragasokamuna. I took the COVID-19 vaccine and so should you. Let's be an example to others. Get vaccinated today and help control the spread of COVID-19.
Vaccinate if you want to eliminate the spread of the virus in our place, and do not procrastinate, but rather let us vaccinate. Get vaccinated today.
Welcome back, Lennox Bowman. I know as the Deputy Chair of the 9 Mornings Committee that you are particularly excited about the special activities for 9 Mornings this year and plans to help bolster the vaccination rate in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I feel so pleased that we are here talking about planning to stage activities in times like we are in today. And I really want to say a hearty thank you to Minister James for his leadership, Permanent Secretary Risa, Noel Macmillan, and the Cultural Officer Maxine Brown, the entire Department of Culture, which seemed to be so very much engaged, National 9 Mornings Committee, the CMO and her staff has been very, very accommodating, very firm, but trying to facilitate as much as possible. And so too has been the police. The process leading to this really is that we had lots of meetings trying to see how we could meet our mandate. And when we discussed that with the minister, he was on board with us. So we had meetings with the committee, with the permanent secretary, with the minister, and then we had meetings with cabinet, and cabinet too demonstrated that they too wanted to see us and the country fulfill its cultural mandate in terms of creating and still keeping our 9 Mornings Festival and have it in some way. So we are very pleased to be here. What I just want to add a little bit to what Bomani said and try not to repeat it. Repeat what he said. The Botanic Gardens, the 9 Nights Festival. We have also been working very closely with the 9 Nights Committee, Rivers, Beaches and Parks, and they too will be staging a totally vaccinated event. So that's something that people will look forward to. The hybrid activity at Victoria Park that we are looking at, we were also charged with looking to see if we can have some form of vaccinated event on the windward side, on the leeward side, and to see how we can address the festival in the Grenadines as well. So that's an ongoing process now in terms of trying to find a venue and the persons who may be interested to ensure that we have something on the windward and leeward side and possibly in the Grenadines which is safe and which is adhering to the protocols and security rights we have. So we are looking at those things. In any case, what we are planning to do is this show that is going to be streamed live for persons in the diaspora and who are not vaccinated and who would enjoy in Victoria Park if they are vaccinated. This show would be much more enhanced than even what we had at Heritage Square. Reason being, we are looking to find some of the best acts in all the villages to have them, of course, the persons must be vaccinated, to have them come into Kingston, spread over the 9 days, so that anybody who is looking at it, either they're vaccinated and they're in person, or if you are in the diaspora, you would be able to enjoy not just what Kingston has to offer, but what the entire country has to offer in terms of 9 Mondays. So we're looking at that. We are also very pleased with the response we've been getting from people in the red zone towards the lighting. This year, as Bumani said, we are going really big on the lights. The theme is a festival of lights, hope in a darkened world. And already I've had some very exciting conversation with some persons in the red zone. I spoke to Owe today. I spoke with Point, and we are looking forward to activities coming out of Fitzstewart, Rosal, Trumaka, Coaltail, Spring Village, Rosebank, and so on, in terms of lights. So we are very we are very much into the lights this year. We have introduced a new dimension to it where we, as Bumani said, we talk about the stringer lights campaign. So we want people to put up even a stringer lights on the house for this Christmas to show the resilience and who we are as Vincentians. So we are, we are looking forward to staging an event that meets all the objectives that we have had in the past, or most of them at least. We want to create activities which revolve around the community and the family. We still want to have an embrace of our core values and the spirit of Christmas and so on. And of course, we want to increase the touristic value, the tourism potential, and the economic value of the festival.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here somewhat. Would this be used as a kind of dress rehearsal to determine whether or not we have Vincimas 2022?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that, and I'm not here to speak for Carnival, but I know what has happened and what has been happening in the Caribbean is that there's been planning in many of the countries for a carnival. Whether that happens or not, we don't know. But I think people are putting plans in place and ready to pivot at any time should things get better or worse. But I think if we look at health, if we look at life and we look at livelihood, all the sectors around, not just culture, not just carnival and 9 Mondays, have been doing likewise. They have been having the plans. If we have to pivot at the last minute, then so be it. So I believe it will be worthwhile looking at in terms of the vaccinated events.
Okay, I think there's a question here for Minister, and the person is asking, how can you push for more tourists through the island when your cultural ambassador is spreading the word that SVG is crime-ridden? How do you and your government plan to deal with that kind of news? Minister?
I think I followed the development while I was overseas in relation to Kevin Little. I think that's what's being addressed. He did in fact apologize, and he did in fact acknowledge that he misspoke on that particular matter, and that took a level of maturity coming from him to really acknowledge that. And I think it's a learning experience for him as a cultural ambassador. It's a learning experience for other persons as well who are in that particular limelight and who they have that added responsibility to showcase and promote St. Vincent and the Grenadines, officially or unofficially. And I think we can just really draw from that and move on. And I don't think we can really dwell too much on that. There are lots of things happening positively in our country, and which we can highlight. And I'm sure Kevin's energies will be placed and highlighting a lot of the positives going forward that has been taking place in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Okay, thank you for that. Lennox, I think this might be a question for you. Someone is asking, why not put up large screens in places like Stubbs, Mesopotamia, and other areas that have 9 mornings?
That's a good question. And anything like that, we will have to discuss it with the issue with the Ministry of Health and Security, because what we are trying to save ourselves is mass gatherings of unvaccinated persons. So whether you gather to look at a screen or you gather to look at a stage, it may be a problem, but I never like to say no or discount anything. And the fact that it is raised, I'm sure the committee will have a say on it. But whatever we do, as the chairman said, would certainly be within the policies and protocols of the Ministry of Health. That is one thing we are very certain of. One of our objectives is to make sure that we have a safe and secure 9 mornings. And the other one is to make sure, with respect to that, is to make sure that we can encourage the process of vaccination.
Thank you. As we wind down our final moments on the program, Minister, anything you wish to highlight at this point before we go?
Well, I'm just really happy that particularly as we're addressing the issue of 9 morning, I'm quite happy that Lennox and Bomani were able to join the program to outline how this is really going to roll out, what measures we're putting in place to ensure the safety of patrons and persons who are coming to the festival. And we would not have this activity if we didn't think that the safety of the general population and the public is paramount. And I think that all of the measures they've been working closely with the COVID-19 task force and the chief medical officer to ensure that safety remains paramount during our festive season. So I'm hoping that we can give the committee the fullest support, and for those communities or persons who would normally engage in the mass gatherings during this time, do understand the period we're in in relation to COVID-19 and the pandemic, and we're urging you to adhere to the health protocols. St. Vincent and the Grenadines will remain safe once persons adhere to the health protocols, and we follow the necessary guidance in relation to that. Tourism Week next week, we're scheduled to launch, have a press briefing to outline a number of initiatives that are coming in stream for the tourism season. And we're hoping to do that sometime next week during the launch of our Tourism Week. And I'm hoping again that all the stakeholders within the tourism sector, we're asking for your full support and cooperation as we recover, and not just recover from a very challenging period of COVID-19 and the volcanic eruption of the last of it, but also recover better. We have to obviously see a better product than 2019 in terms of our numbers, in terms of what we have on offer, and we can only do this by developing and enhancing on what we have as a product. So, I'm hoping for the best, and we're hoping that we can have a very healthy and safe 9 morning period.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Minister, Minister of Tourism, Culture, Aviation, Sustainable Development. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. Also, thank you to Mr. Lennox Bowman and Mr. Bomani Charles for sharing with us this evening. That's our program for today. So glad you could join us. Join us again next week, Wednesday, same time, same place. Until then, do have a pleasant evening.